Good evening, everyone. I want to give a warm welcome to His Excellency the Governor, Andrew Murdoch, um, the Honorable Tanae Furbert, JPMP, Minister of Youth, Social Development and Seniors, the Honorable Kim Wilson, JPMP, Minister of Health, permanent secretaries, to directors, coordinators of DCFS, and to all key stakeholders in the room tonight. I want to thank our other special guests and to the wider audience viewing at home. Thank you. And last but not least, I want to thank our fearless students here tonight. Thank you for your commitment to Bermuda's young people. Tonight, we tackle a topic at the heart of both access and stigma. Should the age of consent for mental health services be lowered from 18 to 16? Stigma often whispers, wait, your problems aren't serious. You can't ask for help yet. Our goal is to turn that whisper into an open conversation and by the night's end, allow roar for timely, youth-centered care. You'll hear clear arguments tonight and sharp rebuttals, but only the kind of respectful sparring that keeps your heart at a steady pace. This is a debate, not the morning after Somerset keeps the trophy this year. I remind you that the positions argued this evening do not necessarily reflect the personal views of the debaters. Their purpose is to bring forth ideas and show that the topic of youth mental health must be spoken about. Without further ado, I will move into the debate and welcome the Honorable Tanae Furbert, JPMP, to give opening remarks.
How is everyone this evening? Good? I want to welcome our esteemed guests, our parents, our educators, all students, our debaters, members of the Youth Advisory Working Group, and my colleague, the Honorable Kim Wilson, the Governor. Welcome to this event this evening. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here for you to share your showcase debate, and today's motion being this House believes that the age of consent to access mental health services should be reduced from 18 to 16. It is not only timely, but it's also deeply resonant with the challenges and opportunities that we face as a community. As the Minister of Youth, Social Development and Seniors, I'm acutely aware of the evolving mental health landscape amongst our young people. Our recent studies have highlighted that nearly 1/3 of Bermudian adolescents aged 10 to 19 exhibit moderate to severe symptoms of depression or anxiety. The statistic represents the lived experiences of our youth, which showcases the urgency for accessible and responsive mental health services. The 2025 budget includes a landmark $25 million investment in social services, the most significant in 2 decades. Of this, $2.29 million is earmarked specifically for mental health support, with $350,000 allocated to the Mid-Atlantic Wellness Institute to enhance its services. Our commitment extends beyond funding. Recognizing the importance of early intervention, we have launched the Community Adolescent Mental Health Training Program. This initiative equips 32 guidance counselors and educational therapists with the tools to identify and address mental health challenges in the youth age 8 to 18. Moreover, we are expanding this training to community organizations, ensuring a holistic approach to youth mental health. The Department of Child and Family Services has also seen enhancements with an operational budget of $19.7 million. We have allocated funds to support psychosexual assessments and counseling services for children, as mandated by the Child Safeguarding Act 2019. Additionally, the Independent Living Program continues to prepare our young adults, our young individuals starting at age 17 for a successful transition into adulthood. Importantly, in alignment with efforts of the Ministry of Health, We are also working to eliminate the stigma surrounding mental health. We recognize that access alone is not enough. Too often, stigma prevents young people from seeking help, even when it's available. That is why public education, awareness, campaign question remains. Should we lower the age of consent for accessing mental health from 18 to 16? This debate is more than a policy decision or discussion. It is a reflection of our collective values, rights, and perspectives that will emerge out of today's debate. Thank you.
Thank you. It's debate time now. So I would like to hand it over to our Speaker of the House, who will now open up the debate and get us on our way.
Good afternoon. This resolution before us today is this House believes that the age of consent to access mental health services should be reduced from 18 to 16. Representing the proposition are its first speakers, Narayan, the second speaker, Carlin, and its third speaker, Amira. Representing the opposition are its first speaker, Trinaya, the second speaker, Mari, its third speaker, Wanai, and Jasim, who will do the reply speech. On behalf of the House, I would like to express a sincere welcome to our esteemed guest, His Excellency, the Governor Andrew Murdoch. The Honorable Tanae Ferber, JP MP, and the nation will be allowed during the constructive speeches only. Points of information, but not during the first and last minute of speeches. I will clap after the first minute and again with 1 minute remaining. To signal the time during which points of information may be raised, for each speech, 15 seconds grace will be allowed. After each speech, I will immediately call up upon the next debater to begin his or her speech. There will be no points or order of there will be no points of order or points of privilege. Heckling is also prohibited. I call upon the first speaker to introduce the proposition case for 6 minutes.
$31.3%. That is the amount of teens in Bermuda who've experienced depression at some point in their lives. This is a problem that must be addressed in Bermuda, and is why I'm speaking before you today. Good day, honorable opposition team, esteemed members of the floor and timekeeper. Today's motion is that this House believes the age of consent should be reduced from 18 to 16 to access mental health services. As the proposition team, we strongly agree with this motion because a right delayed is simply a right denied. As the proposition team, as the first speaker, I will be talking about how the early access to mental health services prevents worsening symptoms and mental health challenges, and also how it tackles the stigma around getting mental health. My second speaker will be talking about how early access to these services save lives, and also how safeguards can still be built in. Finally, my third speaker will give some systematic rebuttals against the opposing team, explaining why we have won this case. I will then return to the floor to give a reply speech. Stating why we have undoubtedly won this debate, and also stating the points of clash in this debate. As a proposition team, we define age consent as the age at which a young person is able to legally do something, in this case, access mental health services. And we also define stigma as negative attitudes, beliefs, and stereotypes people may hold towards people who experience mental health conditions. My first point is by changing this age to 16, people would feel much more open out to reaching out to somebody. I know that many people, as well as myself, simply don't feel comfortable talking to someone they know about their feelings. Whether it be the emotional baggage attached to talking about it, or the stigma around reaching out to somebody, teens simply aren't reaching out.
Point of information.
Accepted.
Actually, 73% of the same children you're talking about would actually prefer to speak to their parents over speaking to professionals.
Well, something needs to change because, as I said before, 1 in every 3 Bermudians are experiencing mental health challenges. So something must be changed in Bermuda. And in this case, we believe that it should be reducing the age from 18 to 16 in Bermuda. as I was saying before, whether it be the emotional baggage attached to talking about it, or the stigma around reaching out to somebody, teens simply aren't reaching out. It's a small island, and many teens, as well as myself, are afraid that if we get help, people will talk and gossip, and that scares us. By lowering the age to seek help without a guardian, it reduces the stigma massively around reaching out to somebody, because it was their choice to get help, and nobody else's. They don't want to go to their friends, afraid it will affect their relationships with them. They can't go to their parents, because they know their parents simply won't be able to grasp the true issue of these problems. And finally, they don't even feel comfortable going to a counselor or therapist because a biting stigma exists, pushing males and females alike away from proper help. Even those small few who are brave enough to try to seek help are often too young to get it on their own, which is why we are trying to put this motion in place. In Bermuda, if you were 16, you were able to be tried as an adult for crimes you've committed.
Point of information.
Denied. So I asked the opposition team, if you were able to be tried as an adult for crimes, why are you not able to be treated as an adult? We need the opportunity to think and act for ourselves. Let's play a little game for those in the audience. Let's play a little game for those in the audience over the age of 30. Raise your hand if you've been separated from your peers and isolated due to an unknown and terrifying virus in your most vulnerable and formative years. Nobody. This era is a completely different time for young people than it was, say, 30 years ago. It is imperative that now, more than ever, that we as young people have the power to choose for ourselves how we act on our own mental health. The time is now to give us that power to act, which is why we're trying to put this motion in place. My second point is about the importance of early access to mental health services and how this can prevent symptoms from worsening over time. The teens of today are facing a mental health crisis. Studies show that 1 in 3 teenagers struggle with mental health issues, as I've said before, a number that has been slowly creeping up over the past 30 years. This isn't just a statistic, ladies and gentlemen, it is a wake-up call. If we continue to delay access to these critical mental health services, we are not just ignoring the crisis. We are allowing it to fester and grow. Without help, many young people are denied. Without help, many young people will suffer in silence due to the stigma around getting mental help, as I've stated previously. And their symptoms will only get much worse. We must recognize that early intervention saves lives. We need to tackle the stigma around mental health and replace it with a message that says loud and clear, we see you, and we care about you. And that is what the motion that today will bring, but denied. If teenagers feel safe, heard, and supported, they are much more likely to seek out the help that they need. But if they are forced to wait too long, the damage can deepen and get much, much worse, leading to depression, anxiety, self-harm, or worse. That is why lowering the age to access mental health services to 16 is not just a policy change. It's a statement to all of those young people out there that we as a society and the government cares about you and your mental health. I've come here today at just 14 years of age because I believe that this change cannot wait. I believe we owe it to ourselves, to our friends, and to the generation after us to act now. And for all of these right reasons, because it is logical, because it is compassionate, and because it is simply necessary, this case must, shall, and will stand. Thank you.
I thank the member for his remarks. We shall now hear from the first speaker for the opposition.
Good evening. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mental health is a big problem amongst today's youth, but it's also a vast and confusing place that teens may get lost in. That's why we oppose the team, but not their arguments. Before I divide the case of my team, let me give some rebuttal to what the first speaker of the proposing team has said. They said that teenagers can't go to their parents because they wouldn't understand. But as I said before in a point of information, teenagers actually prefer to go to their parents and talk to them. And 3 out of 4 parents in Bermuda actually allow their children to attend mental health services. They also said that teenagers do not feel safe contacting professionals. And I say that we agree. It was put in the report. But they would feel more safe contacting professionals if they had their parents with their side. Now on with my case divisions. As first speaker, I will discuss parental and family involvement, cognitive and emotional maturity, and alternative solutions. My second speaker will discuss stigma and downplay of mental health amongst teens and the side effects of medication. And my third speaker will give a clear rebuttal of my opponent's arguments. Now on with my first constructive. As the first speaker of the opposing team, I'd like to say that we do acknowledge the 31% of our teens displaying depression symptoms. We do acknowledge the 20% that display anxiety symptoms. We support them, but what we do not support is the vital role of guardians to be removed from a 16-year-old's mental journey. In fact, a good 73% of the same children confirm that they would source help from their guardians. Many teenagers lack the self-discipline, consistency, or understanding of what they are doing, especially when there is no parental involvement. Removing parental consent allows misdiagnosis, premature treatment, and unhealthy medical manipulation. A number of studies, for example, the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Youth Psychiatry, shows that family engagement in mental health care leads to a higher success rate. Family engagement also ensures better medical treatment and improves emotional stability within a young person. What does this tell us? Parents are not the barriers blocking teens from receiving professional help. To conclude, teenagers are still children. Even at 16, they need their guardians. Keeping the age of consent at 18 ensures safer and better results for all. That's not control, that's care. On with my second constructive, which is cognitive and emotional maturity. Many mental health medications carry serious risks and side effects, which my second speaker will discuss, especially for teenagers whose brains are still developing. According to the psychology and neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex, which governs long-term decision-making, risk assessment, and moral reasoning, is not fully developed until 25. In simple words, our teens are not yet mature enough to make decisions for their mental health. Teens 17 and younger may act impulsively, having limited understanding of long-term consequences. Teenagers, they may prioritize emotional relief over balanced judgment, especially in mental health crises, because of the underdeveloped cortex. So, should the responsibility of mental health really be laid on 16-year-olds? Absolutely not. No, those are promoted by democracies. But this law would actually harm them long-term wise. They are emotionally driven and less capable of evaluating risk, especially under stress. They may cause harm to themselves, and on our side, we would harm our most valuable resources, our young people, which would lead to further consequences down the line. Keeping the age of consent at 18 is not control, it's care. On to my last constructive, which is alternative solutions. As the first speaker, I want to make it clear that we, the opposing team, do not align ourselves with the proposing team's recommendation to reduce the age of consent to access mental health care for teens from 18 to 16. We strongly support the status quo and the recommendations proposed in the Youth Mental Health Report. Some recommendations were education and accessible services. Here's why we support them. Firstly, education. Education brings peace, improves development, and promotes democracy. By implementing interventions with youth and promotion committees at schools, we can educate our students and parents on mental health and what their children may be going through. We can educate the teachers on how to help with negative mental health and symptoms. This would create, my time is protected, sir. This would create a safer and more comfortable environment for students dealing with symptoms and help families make safer decisions when it comes to treatment for their child. For accessible services, the Youth Mental Health Report prioritizes moving the child and youth services from the Maui attachment, and we think this is a good idea. We strongly support this, and not what they have said. That's why we oppose the motion.
I thank the member for her remarks. I now call upon the second member for the proposition.
Bermuda has a grave issue, an issue that has plagued the youth of our country for years, with the situation only becoming worse as of the past decade. And yet, it's completely slipped under the radar until this very debate. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorable adjudicators, worthy opponents, and esteemed members of the floor. The motion before us today goes as follows. This House believes that the age of consent to access mental health services in Bermuda should be lowered from 18 years of age to 16 years of age. As a proposition team, we'll be explaining exactly that, because a right delayed is a right denied. Now let me explain. Before I begin my speech, I would like everyone here to know that we are only 14, 13 years old. That's right. The very group of people that we are talking about today, the teenagers of Bermuda, include people like me and people like the rest of us. So when I stand here and speak, I am not just giving you statistics or studies. I'm giving you a real voice from the very generation that this decision will affect. We are not asking for 14 years old, even though some might say we should. All we want is 16, and that is long overdue in the proposition's eyes. It may sound crazy now, but let me lay this out to you and explain this exactly what we mean.
Help improve lives when the side effects of these medications can endanger the child earlier, meaning those symptoms can get worse, meaning they can die easier.
There is no evidence supporting the fact that going and seeking mental health services would have them die or any negative impacts like that. As I was saying, when mental health issues hit, they hit hard. Half of all lifetime mental illnesses begin before the age of 14, before we even hit secondary school. So let me be clear. Delaying access until 18 doesn't protect us. It pushes us closer.
Point of information.
Denied. It pushes us closer and closer to the edge. It leaves us alone to face worsening depression, anxiety, and in some cases, tragically suicide. Now, in October of last year, a meeting was held discussing the plan for mental health improvement in Bermuda. And even on that, one of the main points discussed was to loosen the legal boundaries to make it easier for these people to benefit from help. To me, everything is pointing towards us changing this law, and all that needs to happen is for it to be passed. The opposition is trying to tell you that the young people of our society are too immature to seek mental help. However, I would argue that
Point of information.
Denied. However, I would argue that those who have the courage to see that they need help and actually go and seek it are actually the most mature, and probably actually those who need it the most. Now, as my first speaker stated, if they are old enough to drive a vehicle on the roads and be tried as a criminal in court, it is entirely outrageous to assume that they shouldn't be able to get their own mental help when they need it. And it's not like anything us as teenagers are doing is bad. All we are doing is trying to protect ourselves from worsening emotional challenges.
Point of information.
Accepted.
You're actually not protecting yourself, because if you were to get a medication, there are many different studies that have been, many different cases where people that have been using these medications for like depression or anxiety have died or killed themselves, or even had things going on that worsen their stability. Especially, it happens in young and in old, where an old man, he committed a homicide due to a drug that he was using for depression.
The opposition fails to realize that seeking mental help does not directly mean medication. It can also be therapy and getting just treatment from a professional that actually knows what they're doing, rather than a teacher or a parent. And now, can I get
Point
a show
of information,
hands?
sir.
Declined. Can I get a show of hands for all of the parents in this room? There is a lot of parents in this room. And I want to make it clear that if we as a collective of teenagers don't come to you for mental health, it doesn't mean that we don't love you, or if we don't get help, we won't know what to do later on.
Point of information.
Declined. One of the most impactful statistics that I found in the adolescent study conducted last year is that 1 in 5 children don't seek mental help simply because their parents don't think that it's necessary. And why is that? Is that 1 in 5 children feel that their parents prioritize family reputation over their own well-being. And that's a problem. Secondly, safeguards can still be built in. Let me be clear. Lowering the age of consent does not mean abandoning protection. It means balancing independence with responsibility. We can, and when we win this debate, we will have safeguards. This means making sure that any 16 or 17-year-old understands what they're agreeing to, whether it be the risks, the benefits, or the potential consequences. Now, of course, we're not suggesting that a teenager in crisis is going to be thrown into this on their own. Furthermore, if the young person chooses, they can involve trusted adults. The opposition fails to realize that there's nothing stopping them from going to their parents if that's what they want. But there's a key difference, and that difference is the fact that it is their choice. They get to decide when, how, and if they bring their parents into this. And that's not recklessness, that is empowerment. And that should be a basic human right. And yet, it has not been given nearly the attention that it not only deserves, but frankly, needs. So no, lowering the age of consent does not mean removing the safety net. It means widening it to more young people so they can be caught before they fall. It means saying, we trust you, but we're here to catch you as well. And honestly, that is what every struggling teenager needs. So I'd like to leave you off with this. The time is now. I stand here today, at 14 years old, asking you to listen to us. Listen to the teens who have been struggling silently. Listen to the teens who are scared of being judged. And listen to the teens who just want the right to say, I need help, and have someone listen, without a permission slip required. Now, the motion before us today is not about a law. It is about a life. And it is about giving young Bermudians the power to take care of their own mental health before it's too late. For all the young people like me who are counting on you, I urge you to vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
I thank the member for his remarks. I now call upon the second speaker for the opposition.
I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, let me repeat my first speaker's persuasive. Mental health is a big problem amongst today's youth, but it's also a vast and confusing places that teens may get lost in. That's why we oppose the motion that this House believes the age of consent to mental health services should be reduced from 18 to 16 in Bermuda. Before I discuss my constructive arguments, let me rebut the argument of the first and second speakers of Team Affirmative. They said that teens might feel that parents may not understand how their child is feeling. But I rebut this by saying that 70% of children actually would rather go to their parents to talk about their mental health struggles. They also said that lowering the age of consent will remove the stigma. But I rebut this by saying that teens are mainly the people who help reinforce this stigma by bullying people who seek mental health services, rather they choose that path or not. Not only that, but they said that there is no evidence to negative effects from medication. I rebut this by saying a 19-year-old boy named Nick began taking the antidepressant.
Point of information.
Yes? That there is no negative effects to medication. Like I was saying, Nick began taking the antidepressant Trintellix to treat moderate anxiety and depression after dysfunction, PSSD. Despite discontinuing the drug, his symptoms persisted, leading to significant emotional distress and a diminish in quality of life. They also said, no thank you. They also said that 16-year-olds are old enough to drive and be tried in court. But I rebut this by saying, this does not prove maturity. Anyone can drive, like my mother. She can drive but still be immature. How does that prove anything? She's not immature, by the way. Now, on with my first constructive. Stigma and downplay of mental health amongst teens. There is a stigma about how... Yes?
You said that there's a stigma standing in the way. However, do you not think that makes it more important for them to be able to seek mental health, for those brave enough to actually go ahead and do it?
Well, yes, very much. But I also feel like it's not fair for 16-year-olds to have to deal with the confusing place of mental health alone without a guardian. As I was saying. Nowadays, being depressed or showing signs of depression is made a joke. But parents may not care about what their child's peers think, so they are more likely to take their child to get help with their mental health.
But not only that, a teen might just be helping push this stigma on themselves and refusing to go places of mental health in fear of being seen as something's wrong with them. Now, on with my second constructive, medication and its side effects. As someone who knows about medication, I firmly believe that 16-year-olds shouldn't be medication without a parent to monitor the side effects. And a child's parent may see the side effects, but be left in the dark and not know. But when using medication, you have to go back every few weeks and just tell the doctor how you feel different, which honestly, an adult or not, you may not notice the difference in behavior. So a child might not notice the difference in behavior. Like 18-year-olds are barely responsible enough. So why would we expect a 16-year-old to be mature and responsible enough to deal with everything in the mental health space? Fun fact, there are about over 200 different types of mental disorders. Imagine you were a young person and you had to deal with that all alone.
Point of information.
No, thank you. My time is protected. That would be so extremely stressful and probably hurt you even more. It's not control, it's care. And that is why we are proud to oppose.
I thank the member for her remarks. The opposition speaker will now deliver, B. I now call upon the third speaker for the proposition.
For those in the audience that are parents, I'm sure at some point in time, you felt frustrated trying to ask your teen how their day was, or when you ask them what's wrong, they don't answer. This is because we feel the need to problem solve on our own. And this has nothing to do with how much we love and how much we trust you. But being able to problem solve on our own feels liberating. It makes the victories seem that much bigger and the lows feel that much smaller. Don't get me wrong though, we appreciate the help and care you try to give us, but sometimes it can add to the pressure. Now, for some of the teenagers that want to seek professional help, it feels scary to admit it because functioning at anything other than 100% is seen as uncommon, even though it's completely normal. This is a stigma that we are trying to break down. We want teenagers to feel like they can ask for help, but right now they're scared. Making professional help just that little bit more accessible can help give those who are deciding that they want to access mental health care the final push that they need.
POI.
Accepted.
Reducing the age of consent isn't the only way to tackle the problem of stigma. We can also have the child and youth services here in Bermuda so teenagers feel more comfortable attending those services.
Where's your question, sorry?
Oh, I said reducing the age of consent.
No,
isn't
but
the-
like, where's your question? Point of information are supposed to be questions. Never mind. I'll address that later in my speech.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, honorable opponents, esteemed adjudicators, and members of the floor. The motion before us today goes as follows. This House believes that the age of consent to access mental health services should be reduced from 18 to 16 years of age in Bermuda. As the proposition, we
Point of
strongly
information.
agree with this motion
Point of
because a
information.
right delayed is a right
Point of
denied.
information.
Declined. I will first offer a rebuttal of Team Opposition's second speaker. Team Opposition's second speaker argued that these teenagers should not be able to have the right to access mental health care on their own because they feel alone. But they don't realize that allowing these teenagers just that little bit more freedom to access these mental health care will enable them the connections and enable them to talk to the people that will help them and guide them
Point of
during these
information.
mental health challenges. Accepted.
Well, what you're saying is we need these children to have early access to these medications. And as I've said before, and my second speaker has also said, that side effects can lead to death. Meaning, so what you're saying is...
My point is not that we want teenagers to have more free access to mental health medication. We just want them to be able to talk to counselors. We want them to be able to talk to
Point of
psychologists
information.
on their own accord without needing the parental support. But we do encourage it. For the parents that do encourage their children to get mental health care, we recognize you and we appreciate you. Accepted.
Sorry. Students can actually access counselors, which are schools counselors that can recommend like solutions to what they're helping. So teenagers can actually talk to counselors, just school counselors.
Yes, and I do recognize that. But what we want is more access. Because what we have now is not working. Now on to my case. Team opposition has argued that we should withhold this right because the prefrontal cortex does not develop until the mid-20s.
Point of information.
But the real question here is,
Point of
where do we
information.
draw the line? Decline. This is a fact that has been drilled into the youth as a reason as why we are too immature to make well-informed and cognitive decisions. If this is the case, is the team opposition suggesting that we should raise the age of consent? Just because the prefrontal cortex has not fully developed
Point of
does not
information.
mean that it has not developed at all. Decline. How do we decide the difference in understanding between a person aged 16 to 17 and a person aged 18? If these teenagers are firstly recognizing that they need help, we should not limit the possibilities for them to do so. I myself am 14 years old, along with most of the members of the team proposition and
information.
opposition, decline. And we are already demonstrating understanding about mental health. I am fighting for a motion that will not even affect me directly until next year, September. Why? Because this motion can make a difference to at least 5 or 10 people. And that's 5 or 10 people that will maybe be able to function a bit easier, who may be able to go on each day feeling a little bit lighter. Accepted.
Well, you're saying it's only 5 or 10 people, but when our motion, when we are not just focusing on 1 or 2 or just a certain amount of teenagers, we're focused on everybody.
Yes, and while may you repeat that, please?
All right, let me break it down. Basically, you are saying that what your motion is going to affect maybe around 10. Or just
No,
the
what I'm
popularity.
saying is that if we allow this motion to continue, if we allow this motion to pass, then we can affect at least 5 or 10 people. We are hoping to affect all teenagers in Bermuda that want to access mental health care, but there is stigma around mental health. We cannot affect it by just changing the motion, but we recognize that this is the first step. Now back to my case. This may sound like a small number, but these could be real people. We could be making an impact on who are we to stop them? Who are we to stop them? The team opposition argued that we already have legal pathways in place for teenagers to access mental health care. But just because there are already ways does not mean that everyone who needs it will use it. I'm sure you heard the figures before, but 31% of students reported symptoms of anxiety and depression. Symptoms of depression, which is 779 people. This is 779 teenagers in Bermuda that need help. And with the way things are right now, they will not go and get it. The team opposition has also argued the importance of family involvement. And we do recognize the importance of family involvement, and we appreciate everyone who encourages their teenagers to seek help when they need it. But not all teens will. We are actively ignoring the teenagers that may not be able to access mental health care through their parents, who may have been denied mental health care when they were brave enough to speak up about it. Just like the previous members of my team have mentioned, mental health does not wait until you're 18. They hit you early. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the motion before us today is as follows. That this House believes that the age of consent to access mental services should be reduced from 18 to 16 years of age in Bermuda. As the proposition, we strongly agree with this motion because a right delayed is a right denied. Thank you.
I thank the opposition. I thank the member for her remarks. The third opposition speaker will now deliver the last closing speech opposing the case.
I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mental health is a big problem amongst today's youth, but it is also a vast and confusing place where teens may get lost. That's why we oppose the motion that this House believes that the age of consent should be reduced from 18 to 16 in Bermuda. Now I will prove that Team Affirmative's arguments have not proven that the age of consent to mental health services should be reduced from 18 to 16 in Bermuda. My role is to rebut all the arguments of my opponents. Let's begin. They said that talking to professionals will reduce talking. They said that talking to their parents could actually damage deeper among the years. And I rebut this by saying,
Point of information, we never said that.
I didn't accept it. They said that talking to their parents would actually add on to the stress of what they're going through. And I rebut this by saying, even my mom, she's out there in the crowd, my mom has helped me go through some things. And I know, please raise your hand if any of you have talked to your parents about something when you was younger and they actually helped you out. Yeah, that's a whole lot, so.
Point of information.
Yes.
We do not disagree that parents can be very helpful when discussing mental health problems. We just instead agree that the stigma is so great that it might be needed for therapy or some external mental health help in order to
Thank you, I get
properly.
your point. But your first speaker did say that very little teens would actually go to the parents and would rather go to a psychiatrist, when you just saw so many people put their hands up saying that of the medications they are being prescribed. Even if you're going to a therapist can still give you medication and more than likely will still give you medication. And like I said in a POI, there are people that have done things to other people or have done things to themselves due to medication that was given. They also said 1 in 5 children's parents do not understand or trust their children to talk to them. I rebut this by saying 3 out of 4 parents would actually allow their children to get access to mental health services or even talk to them.
Point of information.
No, thank you. Maui, it really puts on a big stigma because a lot of kids, they get scared. They're like, oh, this is a place where crazy people go. So if we were to move it to somewhere like Meros or somewhere else, they would feel less stigma because it's not associated with Maui or something like that.
Point of information.
No, thank you. Or associated with Maui or anything because it's less stigma. Nobody wants to go somewhere where crazy people go. They'd rather go somewhere where it's welcoming and anything like that. They also said, Team Prop said that they said that, does Team Opposition want to raise the age to access mental health? I say no. Many democracies think that 18 is a balance point where you are able to reason logically and not emotionally. And that's also in the report that we are talking about. They said kids may not use other legal pathways. And we said, so why should we use the new laws? I asked the following questions. Is it in Bermuda's best interest to lower the age of consent from 18 to 16 because several 16-year-olds demonstrate high level of maturity both locally and internationally? And 2, are we ignoring youth and treating them badly by forcing them to bring parents into their mental health concerns? For both questions, we strongly say no. Although some 16 and 17-year-olds may appear to have it all figured out, because their prefrontal cortex is underdeveloped, they may act on emotion, not reason, during a mental health crisis. And it's in their best interest to have their parents involved in these decision-making processes. This is not treating them badly, it's working under the cause of in their best interest. It is a safeguard to protect them. And it is in the responsibility of every responsible government around the world to protect the most vulnerable citizens, mainly their youth and their citizens. This is not what we call control, this is what we call care. And that's, for these reasons, we are proud to oppose.
I thank the opposition speaker. At this time, there will be a 2-minute break while teams prepare their reply speeches.
Feel free to help yourself to some sandwiches and drinks in the back, whatever prepare their reply speeches.